Hey there, everyone. Good morning. Today, I want to talk about something that is a place a lot of us get stuck, a type of thinking that gets a lot of us stuck. And I want us today to start to think about it in a whole new way. This just came up for me last week. I was teaching a workshop and we were talking about what does playing bigger mean to you? What do you want to do? If you're an artist, what does your playing big look like in terms of your self expression or growing your reach? If you're an entrepreneur, what does playing bigger look like in your business? If you work in a large organization, what does playing bigger look like in terms of the roles you want to go for or how you want to reallocate your time and energy? What does it mean to you to go for your playing bigger dream? And someone asked a question, a really important question in that conversation. They said, yeah, but what if I don't know if my work is good enough to go for that dream? How do you find out, or what do you do with that uncertainty? Now, if you know my work, you know I love to talk about the inner critic voice, and that's a direction we could go with that. Oh yeah, okay, you're hearing from your inner critic, and here's some inner critic tools. But today there's something else I want to do with this, a different place I want to go. And that is to really think about this type of question. Am I good enough is one of them. Is my work good enough? Am I talented enough at that? Am I ready? Is my work even unique? Is my voice unique? Who am I to say this? These are all the kinds of questions that often come up for us when we're on the verge of sharing our work in the world in some way, when we're on the verge of stepping into that next playing bigger dream. And I want to talk about all those questions today as a type of question, a category. And the category is these are self assessment questions. These are questions we ask in an attempt to assess ourselves, to step outside of our internal experience of just being a person with desires and moods and ups and downs in our process and in our work, to step outside of ourselves and look at ourselves as if we're a package, look at the persona of us, and try and judge, is that person, is that work good enough? How do they measure up? And what I want to suggest today is that you and I never need to ask a self assessment question again. We can drop them. We can drop them. Why? Can we do that? And why would we benefit from doing that? So, first of all, our self assessments are almost always way off base, very inaccurate. And I can say from thousands of conversations with women in which those self assessments come up again and again, when we dig a little into them, we can see they're not based on evidence. They're based on some other things that we're going to talk about in a moment. And any observer looking at them can see, you're missing some truths in that, or you're absorbing some fictions in that. This is not a truth you want to have guide your life. Because some of the things that go into our self assessment are our childhood messages. What did we learn about ourselves, consciously or unconsciously? What we were good at, what we weren't good at, what we deserved in our lives or in our careers. All those child messages, even if we've done some work around them, they're going to factor into how clearly we see ourselves. There's internalized stereotypes and conditioning, right? If I, as a girl, got the message I'm not good at math, that's going to affect my self assessment. Even if I think I just personally, individually am not good at math, right? The messages I got from the culture or the track that the culture put me on is going to affect my self assessment. If no one in my ethnic or cultural group was considered a good student or an academic type, those stereotypes are going to affect my self assessment. So, stereotypes come in there too. Our negativity bias, that we remember so much more strongly our negative, painful experiences than our positive ones. So, if I got a piece of tough criticism on my creativity, my artistic skills back when I was 7 years old, I'm going to remember that much more strongly than I'm going to remember the positive feedback or the neutral response I got on my creative work. And that too vivid memory, that overly weighted memory, is going to affect my self assessment. And then another big thing that affects how we assess ourselves is fear. That if I'm contemplating speaking up or going for some bigger dream and it feels scary, a very convenient way to cover the fear and yet let the fear's agenda win is to say, am I ready yet? Am I good enough? No, I'm not sure I am. I don't feel like I am. So I can retreat back into my comfort zone. So, with all of those at play, our assessments often really mislead us of ourselves. So, that's one reason we want to drop them. A second reason is that when we're in our self assessment, we're actually in our egos. We're in a very limited part of ourselves. And today I want us to think about the ego as, first of all, it's that part of ourself that is really identified with the separate self. So the part of us that feels, I, Tara, I'm defined by these borders of my body. I'm separate from you. I'm an individual. So your success is not my success. Your experience is not connected to my experience. Now there's other parts of me, deeper parts of me that feel, oh, we're all one ecosystem impacting each other. And I'm one more drop of water in a great ocean, and and more than anything, I'm part of this ocean, right? And I'm deeply connected. But the ego in me, right, is more identified with that separate self. The ego is also the part of us that's very concerned with the story we have about ourselves. It likes a self concept, it likes the story. So, this is the part that when it gets very rigid, well, I'm a good person and I would never do that. And over there are some bad people. Or my story might be, well, I'm this religion and that defines everything, about me, and it's a huge part of who I am. And over there, that group, they're different, right? Or the ego in me might be really attached to uh, these were my these are the list of things I'm good at, and these are the list of things I'm bad at. So the ego just likes a story about the self. It's like the world is so vast and uncertain, and so what the ego is searching for is that firm story about the self that helps us to orient. And to some degree, we need that, right? To some degree, we need some self concept we're operating with. But that really can get out of hand and can come to dominate and can get too rigid where we lose contact with, but I'm ever changing. And my experiences and my story don't entirely even define me. And there's parts of me that seem to be vaster than what this personal self has experienced. And I am not going to rest so assured that I'm a good person and you're not. I'm going to be more open to the fluidity of how our life circumstances and our stressors and our pressures cause behaviors and good and bad in both of us, right? So, so the ego loves self-assessing. It's really secure feeling for the ego to say, I sized it up, I'm good at this or not that. And the really fascinating thing is, it doesn't really matter so much to our egos whether our story is a rosy, I'm awesome, confident one, or the story is, oh, I'm less than, I'm not. Because the ego is not looking for a positive, uplifting story. It's just looking for a familiar and firm story. So when we're in self-assessing, right, when let's go back to that questioner, when she's saying, I know I want to do this, but am I good enough? Right? That place of, I long to do this. I have a felt experience of craving to do this. When she's noticing that, she's in her inner life, in her inner landscape, attending to the sensations and the currents that are going on there. And she could have the option of just following those. But when she steps outside of herself and says, am I good enough? Do I measure up? She's going to that egoic place of, what's the story about me that I can hold here? And that can begin to not only be misleading because the story is usually false, as we were talking about, but it's also a very narrow, constraining place to be. It also gives a lot of power to the world, right? That I'm going to let the world tell me if I'm good enough. Instead of, I'm going to let the world give me some information about what's viable, what maybe is popular, what people are looking for, but I'm not going to layer onto that a story about, do I measure up, right? What does that even mean, especially for those of us that are in the arts or innovating or trying to tell our story? it's a nonsensical term to think about being good enough. There's just questions of what's effective, what resonates, what accomplishes the artistic or expressive or entrepreneurial intention that we have. So, one more thing, I want us to think about how, I want us to appreciate how even when we're not self-assessing, we still can really improve our work and make it awesome quality. Because I know for me, an initial fear was, well, if I stop assessing, if I stop that vigilant, am I good enough? How am I measuring up? Doesn't that just mean I'm like lolling around all the time with my work and no attention to quality? So I want you to think of a 4-year-old girl who wakes up one morning and decides, I want to make a fort today. I'm going to make an awesome fort. That's going to be so exciting. So first of all, notice she has a creative desire. And then she goes and she starts making it. And as she's making it, some thoughts are going to naturally occur to her like, what does this fort need now? Does it need another pillow? Does it need a bigger door? Does it need a little more height? What does it need? So she's actually doing creative discernment, even though she's in a space of play, even though she's certainly not worrying if she's good enough, she's editing and improving and tweaking her work. And then she's naturally going to sometimes look at that fort and be like, am I liking it? Am I pleased with it? Do I need to start over? No, redo the whole thing because I decided, no, it can't be made of blankets. It needs to be made of sheets, right? Or is this not what I envisioned? Is it what I envisioned? So she's also asking, is this expressing what I wanted to express? Is my vision coming through? Am I satisfied with what I'm making here? And then along the way, she's also going to ask, is it done? Is it done yet? Does it need more? Does it need something taken away or added? And so she's asking that question, that really sensitive, quiet question of, is this creation complete yet? Which is a core creative discernment question for all of us. The other thing she'll find is that sometimes her assessments of how the work is going are going to lead her to thoughts about outside resources or collaborators to bring in, right? Very naturally, a kid working in that way is going to say, wait a minute, I realize I do need another pillow, so I need mom to reach the highest shelf in the closet so I can get that other pillow. Or, you know what? I need my friend from around the corner to come and bring flowers to decorate this fort with. So she is actually identifying resources and collaborators and team all quite naturally. So in all those ways, she's improving her work. She's in this feedback loop with the work itself. But notice what she's not asking. She's not asking, am I a good fort maker? Am I a good enough fort maker? How does this fort compare to other people's forts? Is my fort unique in the landscape? Do I deserve even to take up the space to make this fort? She's not asking those questions. So the difference is she's asking questions that assess the work. She's not asking questions that assess herself. She's asking questions that assess the work and not asking questions that assess herself. And whatever she assesses about the work, she doesn't make that into a story about herself. Now, if we could all do that, if we could follow our creative longings and dreams in that way with more play and more immersion and that deep attention that keeps saying, what is this need now? And is my vision translating? And who else might I want to bring in here? And is it done yet? And continually ask those discernment questions without making it a referendum on ourselves. I think our work would be certainly more joyful. I know our work would be more authentic and unique and stunning and impactful. And we wouldn't be getting stuck in the way those self-assessment questions get us so stuck. So today, what I want to invite you to do is notice self-assessment thoughts, notice questions of self-assessment that come up. You do not have to delete those from your thinking. That's probably not realistic because it is that ego. Tell me how I measure up. That's going to be there. But you can choose not to follow that line of thought. You can choose not to go searching for an answer to the question. You can choose not to let the answer that comes up in your mind direct your course of action. You can choose to say, I hear a self-assessment thought. I'm going back to my work assessment thoughts and questions. I'm going deeper into the process, the dialogue with my actual work. And that is what I wish for you and for me and for all of us today. Mwah. Lots of love.